blah, blah, because I don't get it. Like, of course, like, a part of, an ego feels good when you're desired and they wanna include you in things. Um, but I remember, you know, like, when I got home, like, the next year or something, or maybe 2 years, I had an English teacher and, we got to write about songs that represented, I don't remember if that was the exact prompt, our lives, and I remember I was, like, really big into Tupac and Tupac Shakur. And the thing about Tupac's music is that if I was thinking about it in the shower, like, that's why I'm wet, that the more the world would listen to something like Tupac's lyrics, they would know. 'Cause I said some things at the United Nations when I was in middle school. I said some things. Um, they would know just how many issues the US actually had. And we had kept that less under wraps, but we had, like, PR campaigns essentially through Hollywood, through our music that we also exported, that, life was peachy keen, right? You want to live here. You want to be cool. You want to be American. And I'm not trying to say anything's good or bad. I'm just telling you, like, the big things that you may have missed if you were just listening to the news or just watching the media or just following your favorite artists. Because the truth is, I went to college and I studied economics, global economics, international studies, not as my major, but as topics I wanted to explore. And that's when you realize, when you're told that the American dream is possible, which is, a tagline that both parties use in our country very much. Um, we actually studied the statistics, and I was a statistics minor. Um, and you realized like just how few people experience upward social and economic mobility in this country. I don't remember the exact statistic, but you know, it's really bad. So I was, like, talking to my wife last night, and I was like, "Listen, you and I, we weren't supposed to make it. We made it against every odd against us to find peace and happiness, and dare I say, a modicum of enlightenment." Not saying I'm enlightened, I certainly still have an ego. Um, but I also know people who have millions of dollars personally who aren't happy the way I've been happy. And I'm for sure know that there are billionaires out there by how they're acting, that they're not deeply happy. And what I've realized over the years is that the main thing that needs to upgrade, if there's anything to fix in the world, it's not the symptoms. We must figure out how to get everyone to go within and realize that at least 99% of the population is born loving with a good heart. It's just that, for example, in middle school, I saw the world as it was before I was told that I need to go make a living. Um, I think that was, like, the same year I got a job, right? Like, I was 13, I got a job, because I didn't have any spending money because my mom was poor. Um, and we can get into that too because poverty is I do agree with a lot of folks when they say poverty can be a mindset. But it's just not as simple as that, and when you put it that way, people get hurt because they're like, "How can you possibly think that I did this to myself?" There are generational factors, there are cultural factors, like, I was just thinking about, like, I haven't called a legislator in so long, and so long, and I'm in the top 10% of American earners, and that sounds like, "Ho, ho, ho, hoity-toity," but when you think about it, the 99 we are the 99% movement was so big, but you had people who are making, like, upper 6 to 7 figures counting themselves in the 99%, but when the graph looks like this, the top 10% actually make a lot. I think back in 2012, if you made, like, 50 grand and you were partnered with someone that made 50 grand, you were in the top 10% of income earners. It might be less now. It might be so I might be wrong with what I just said about myself, but, um, yeah. Where was I going with this? So, um, the thing about what's going on with, immigration enforcement is just Something that people don't talk about a lot because I think attention span, social media, the algorithms, people who don't want to read into a deeper problem are getting activated, and it's because, you know, we don't see the larger pattern of, you know, decades ago, we started building factories in Mexico through partnerships with Mexico and Canada, and a lot of the folks who had simpler lives, I'm not saying that they were happy because I don't know, but they had simpler lives. Maybe they were farming, maybe they were, doing simple labor, having their own shops that, Walmart didn't wipe out. Because I was just in Mexico a couple months ago, and it's like all the stores look like our stores now. And you have a lot of unemployment. There's actually a video clip that my friend put up of Republicans, I think it was Reagan and H.W. Bush debating very compassionately, saying, "Listen, if we don't figure this out, we're gonna have a problem at the border because unemployment's over 50%." And we contributed to that, um, by, like, saying, "Here are some better paying jobs in our factories," and then, when our consumer friends here, didn't wanna buy those products, we closed those factories, and then people actually were unemployed. And it's tough because then that contributed to the drug crisis, which contributed to the cartels, and, it's all a knock on. But what I wanted to get at was I was in the car with somebody who has really high anxiety driving, and I started to see the microcosm and the macrocosm again, where when you aren't confident in your position, like deeply, deeply loved and confident, secure, you start to control or try to control other people. And honestly, I think that's what the US has been doing for the majority of its young life. Um, after getting out of the clutches of, Britain, um, there's always like a defensive, like they could come for us. And you're talking about a country made up of folks who had to flee another country, and that brings some generational fear. Um, and then we got in charge, or like a majority in these governing bodies like the United Nations. And we've been able to exert our control over a lot of other nations. And honestly, they just took it. They just took it because there weren't a lot of options at that time. But we now live in an age where Joe Schmo, can I be a Joe Schmo right now? Can get on YouTube and say what they've seen. And there isn't this hiding behind a facade. And actually, in a way, I think that this is its own sort of correction. I don't know if it's a market correction, it might be a social correction, a global correction, but we're all figuring this out together. We're all here just trying to figure out how to be human with one another and ourselves. And in that process, I think a lot of us are waking up. Um, I think sometimes, I can get caught in a loop because the ambient energy around me that I'm absorbing is more, um, at least on my computer, right? If I go out in person, no problem. Like, "Hi, Anna, love you. How you doing today? What's going on? Do you need something? Blah, 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 blah." But the ambient energy can be tense. I live in a building, I think, with more immigrants than not, and it can be tough when you're feeling targeted. But I also am working on I downloaded my data from Facebook and Instagram, and I'm planning to at least deactivate one and potentially delete the other. Because I remember my life before social media. That was around middle school and high school. High school, I didn't have social media. Social media like, Facebook started my freshman year of college. Um, so I remember those times when you had the peace and the time, and the boredom, honestly, to think for yourself. And I don't know if we get a lot of time to do that. I'm grateful for, my elite college education for at least, helping me solidify a logic framework, but I also know that my intuition has been spot the fuck on since I was a kid, but I papered over it because I was told and I believed that I needed to behave a certain way in order to be a contributing member of society. You know, right down to telling people they need to get in the streets with us. I'm not saying that that's the right or wrong thing to do. I'm saying for me and my energy, when I'm around that much anger, if it's an angrier crowd, I mean, I got a heart attack right around that time, which told me, "You're not made for this." But what I am made for is guiding and showing and advising. And I think that's why I was chosen to go speak at the United Nations, and I think that's why I served on 3 different executive boards before the age of 25. It's just I didn't realize how to have boundaries and to say, "This is a great idea, and I 100% know it's a good idea, um, and I can't do it all." I actually am better for your organization continuing to see the overview and continuing to show you what needs attention instead of executing myself. And I know some people when they hear that they're gonna feel some kind of way, and I felt some kind of way about myself for the longest time because I grinded my face off for most of my 20s and 30s and suffered a lot for it, you know? I've adopted this view that's been really effective, that there's nothing really to fix with my body, that if I have a symptom, it's a symptom. It's not a problem to be eradicated or medicated or, to smoke pot. When you take care of yourself, your body takes care of you back. And everyone's care is different. Like, I don't have the same sort of human design calls it sustainable energy, right? Like, I can't just top myself off and keep grinding my face off. I can sometimes do that when I'm around people who grind their faces off happily, but it's not really, like, for me. Where was I going with this? So what I said at the United Nations, like, the key thing that I remember saying was, "We have our own problems to address here at home. What business do we have telling any other country how to live?" And that principle has stuck with me and has saved my life, and I mean that 100% literally. 'Cause I feel like authority and trusting authority, like, yeah, if the authority deserves it. Like in Korea, if something wasn't going right, the citizens would stop working, back when you could do that for, when you weren't farming, and they would petition the king by literally sitting in his courtyard and, like, prostrating and being like, "Dear king, please listen to us. We have things to say that you must hear. We" like, and we're missing some of that, the freedom, I'm saying. We're missing the freedom 'cause, this strike that's happening tomorrow, it's only 1 day, and I suspect that's because most people aren't set up to strike any longer because 'cause their rent, and they don't make enough money because that's the way the system's been going for a while. Um, but this principle has saved my life because when I realized at the height of being sick and nearly destitute that I was still trying to get answers from other people. When I spend 24/7 living in this body, I spend my entire life feeling my symptoms, and I know what kind of environment I'm in. It's just that I wasn't awake enough to see what I was dealing with. But as I woke up and as I surrendered, and I literally just went, "I give up. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I can't get answers. Like, help me out, show me." And that's when I learned I, like, found Deepak Chopra online, I found Sadhguru online, and I don't follow anyone like they're Jesus or my guru, but I loved what Sadhguru said about, like, "You don't need to trust what I say, but try it for yourself." And it was small stuff, like how to drink water properly, like when to sleep, how to observe your thoughts in the case of Deepak. And slowly but surely, I started feeling lighter, and I started realizing that we have been told not to trust ourselves. We have been told to give away our power. You were told that we're inadequate, that we needed to buy things to fulfill a certain vision of what success looks like. And don't even get me started. I need to make a whole 'nother video about laughter versus sadness and crying. Um, but these are the reasons, like, I think the reason sometimes I feel the reason I still get sad is because so many people I love are still stuck in this cycle. And I know what it took for me to get out of it. I couldn't really be told. You know, I looked back at one of my notes when I was first just, prescribed Adderall. Don't even get me started on what's ADHD and what isn't. But, you know, there was exactly one line in the paperwork that was like, "Consider lifestyle changes." When I was grinding my face off because I thought I had to work my ass off in order to prove that I was, you know, a contributing global citizen, I didn't have time for lifestyle changes. I didn't have capacity to think about what my body was feeling. You kidding? So I get the position that a lot of doctors are in, and it must be heartbreaking, you know? What I don't remember if it was dentists. I think dentists have, like, a really high suicide rate, which I think might be, like, some of it might be microbiome related, but I know doctors are up there too, and I can only imagine what it's like, especially if you're a doctor that knows the power of a lifestyle change, um, to just watch people not be able to do that, because it's heartbreaking for me, and I don't see life and death like that every day. Um, but yeah, I just needed to get this off my chest, and I don't know who's gonna watch it, and I don't mean to make you sad. Um, like, I'm gonna get out of this chair and move my body and drink the rest of my tea and remember that, you know, some of the best things that you can do when things are crazy is to actually enjoy yourself. I don't think it's an act of defiance in my way. I think it might be I guess I'd rather it be defiance than survival because like it's like, oh, you know, you gotta cope by being happy. Um, but I think it's really just me trying to return to my soul, you know? And the more I do it, the more other people around me seem to do it. And I remember when I was really taking great care of myself in the last crazy administration, and things that I had wanted to happen were happening even though you wouldn't think that it should happen under a particular administration. So I allow myself to be surprised. Um, it was like a health related thing. I don't remember, you know, what exactly it was right now, but anyway, yeah, that's my life for today. Just being imperfect so that I can get things out of my system and into the world that I feel like are hopefully helpful perspectives. Um, in this case, just context, you know, like this is a big reset, y'all. I know a lot of my friends who come from a lot more privilege are having probably the hardest time right now. And I think it's because their dream or their concept of our country used to be really good. Um, Whereas I was born into a concept of this country that and my right shoulder blade is twitching right now, that really wasn't healthy. It's really toxic. I saw my friends get arrested for shit that other kids would get away with because they had money later in life, right? Even smaller stuff, you know? I saw friends enter the other program at my high school and have their dreams killed off because their teachers didn't believe in themselves and didn't believe in their kids, their students. So I've always known that we have our own problems to fix. My concept of this country is not getting destroyed this year. In a weird way, in a weird way, I'm seeing people wake up. And it's sideways, right? Like things don't always happen directly, but people are waking up and realizing that we have some work to do. And it's the right people, I think, who are waking up, the people who have the capacity, have privilege, have access, and they're realizing, "Oh my god, like, we don't look that good anymore because we haven't been." But they didn't know that, right? They didn't know that because they didn't grow up in that, and they didn't have any access to that, and I get it. I get it. And I think, I think I was trying to not think, I was explaining to my wife why I don't despair in these times, and I think this is part of it. Like, I see a bigger picture where correction does need to occur. Do I wish it happened more gently? Of course. I don't want any of this. But deeper down, I have wanted us to be more honest. To be more honest as a country, to be more honest to each other, to be more honest with ourselves. And I have wanted that since I was wee, and it's happening. There are really important conversations happening that could have been happening when I was 9. It might have taken decades, but it's better late than never. We're just being honest now. The hate is being honest, the love is being honest, the people pouring into the streets trying their best is honest. This is alignment in a weird way. So, yeah, I'm gonna sip this tea. I'm gonna let this sit. I think I'm gonna actually hit the button. Thanks for letting me be honest, y'all. Take care.